President Cyril Ramaphosa says Eskom is making headway in recouping billions of rand paid irregularly to companies. Ramaphosa says coal agreements and construction contracts valued at about 11 billion rand were cancelled. The SIU is also investigating some of the coal and diesel suppliers at the power utility. We're now joined by Kganyago, SIU spokesperson, and Sahlulele Luzipo, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Mineral Resources and Energy. A big thank you to both our guests for your time this afternoon. Mr. Kganyago, let's start with you, and you can take us through the journey and what you have unearthed so far.
Thank you very much, Dudu, and thank you to your viewers. Eskom has been one of those investigations that are really huge, in a sense that when we started, we were looking at some of the small investigations that related to employees, but then later on it became bigger in terms of the investigation on the coal contracts that were entered into, and where we found that there were people that were doing these coal contracts and they were giving inferior kind of coal that ultimately ended up damaging the machinery at Eskom, and that then went bigger to a point where initially we would have conveyor belts that were taking coal away from the mines that were next to the power stations, and therefore they were then broken, and then they created a situation of transportation contracts that were then they would get coal from far away mines so that they can create contracts for transportation. And then that was one part. Then later on, it was the issue of the building of the power stations. And later, when it came to that, we had external companies like ABB and them who would then overcharge Eskom, working with the people in Eskom. To that effect, we have recovered 1.6 billion rand from ABB, which is a Swedish company. And then there are also other officials like Tlakudi and them who we referred to the prosecution, and they are now being prosecuted. Those are some of the things that we were looking into, but there were many of them that were involved.
Mr. Luzipo, all these companies, from the Swedes to investigations related to employees, would not have been made possible if it were not for some of the employees at Eskom. What is it that the committee understands about the DNA of the crimes that were committed by some of those who were employed by the power utility?
Good afternoon to you and your viewership. Good afternoon, Kaizer. First, I think let's congratulate the SIU on the good work that they are doing. We must appreciate people when we make some criticisms. We must also be equal in appreciating when there is progress or some work that is being done. To come to your question, I think the issue, let's allow these processes to prevail and then be able to say who are the responsible individuals. I'm not sure how we can categorize the issue of employees, because it's quite clear contracts are entered into by people who are in executive positions. So if we talk in the context of people in executive positions, I would say that from our position as the Portfolio Committee on Mineral Resources and Energy, we think that we have indicated on what we have always said, that the crisis in terms of the electricity availability is not necessarily on the basis that there is no available electricity. It is on the basis that there is a well-planned strategy to make sure that the power utility does not perform to its optimum, so that a crisis can be created in order to justify some of the issues that the SIU has raised. For example, one of the things we've raised on quite a number of occasions was that if you deal with the issues of Eskom, at the core of its issues of maintenance, its acts of sabotage, we have raised questions, for instance, that if you had a better management system, it wouldn't be easy for people to put stones instead of putting coal. And therefore systems will always remain the most central part. So in a nutshell, we welcome this kind of work that has been done, and we think it's going to unravel and uncover more of those things. And I must say, I appreciate also the extension of the scope, Because one of the things we've raised was that why do you need to do ground transport when you have got, in many of these instances, you have got coal mines that are much closer that may require a conveyor belt instead of road transportation. So if the scope goes to as far as looking at even the mode of transport, and I think it may assist us at least to address this issue so that we can then look at other alternative sources of electricity to augment the available resource in the form of the coal-powered fired power stations.
Kganyago, Mr. Luzipo speaks of better management. Is that what you found, especially when it comes to investigations related to employees? Have you received a request to look into the former Eskom head of security, Karen Pillay, or Jan Obohoza, who is also leaving the utilities soon?
Not necessarily as individuals. I always say that we do not investigate individuals. We look at processes, and if these processes lead us to you, we will get to investigate you. Therefore, at the end of it all our processes will show us where these things are. For example, if we were found that there would be transportation that is coming to deliver coal, it arrives at Eskom, and it doesn't offload. It gets registered by employees of the Eskom, and it doesn't offload. It goes away with the coal and come back with the same load, and then deliver it on the second round, but they are going to now be paid for 2 loads. And those are the things that are really done by people who work there. But also when contracts are entered into, we find in some of the instances that there is clear collusion between the management and the people that are entering into contract. And in a case where it then comes to you, we will get to you. It is not about the individual to say we are investigating you. But if you are found to have been part of this investigation, we will then deal with it in accordance to the evidence that is before us. And we present the evidence as it is, and we are able to show it to the people. That is why when we bring the evidence, for example, to these external companies, they immediately come and say, we understand what has happened. Some of them would say, no, it's not us. Can we pay the money? But we tell them, yes, we want the money back, but it doesn't absolve you from being charged criminally if the need arises.
Mr. Luzipo, when Mr. Kganyago speaks of various companies, including a Swedish company, what means or options are available to you as a committee to speak to your counterparts in that country about the behavior of this particular company, for instance?
Look, once a matter obviously is of criminal nature, it squarely falls under the, I can't answer on behalf of that portfolio committee of correctional services as well as justice. Or most definitely all matters that relate to judicial processes will have to be undertaken. But safe to say that we would expect also from cooperation of the SIU that the 2 specific portfolio committees will have to work very closely and see where we can assist these processes. Those 2, obviously, the lead committee will be the one on public enterprise, of which Eskom squarely falls under. We will do our level best also where, if so required, to work with all law enforcement agencies, including the SIU, where they need the cooperation of the portfolio committees. Most definitely, we will have to encourage and make sure that the matters, regardless of whether the entity is an external one or is a domestic one, the mere fact that you trade in the South African market, then we have to do that. The Americans say they don't follow you, they follow the dollar. And we say in this case, don't just follow any other thing, follow the rand, the use of the rand. If that person is trading in South Africa, then we must follow the rand, even if that individual is outside the country.
Mr. Kganyago, you mentioned the words "and other ones" in terms of your investigations. So you've covered employees, you've covered the conveyor belts in terms of coal, you've covered some of the companies that are involved. What else?
Yes, at the moment there is an extension to do of the work that we need to do, and now we are focusing on the purchasing of diesel. because it is the one that is being purchased in bigger quantities now. Therefore, we are making sure that those processes that have been done there are done correctly. Where it has not been done correctly, we will then indicate. And that is the one that we are focusing on at the moment, in between diesel and coal, because those ones are the ones that are used now, especially with this load shedding. But also, in as far as the issues that relates to the employees, we are following up on the implementation of our recommendations, because we do not want a situation where we just send recommendations for disciplinary action to happen and that doesn't happen. We are working very closely with the portfolio committees, and we are also working with SCOPA around that, and the presidency, the Department of Monitoring and Evaluation, wherein we want to follow up all the other recommendations that we have done before.
Thank you very much to both our guests. Kganyago speaks for the SIU. Sahlulele Luzipo is the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Mineral Resources and Energy.